I would like you to introduce us to the world of the Fab Labs and their business models, how they work, since you're really experienced in that field.
Right. So Fab Labs emerged out of a big research program at the MIT in Boston, Massachusetts, which is run by Neil Gershenfeld. The name of the program is Center for Bits and Atoms. So what Neil is researching is how we could manipulate atoms as we can manipulate bits right now. So bringing the digital and the internet to the world to the material world of the atoms. Now he was, as a first step, he was researching how we actually make things, and particularly how we make things through numerically controlled, computer-controlled equipment. So he gathered all those very expensive machines and has them all in his lab. And at a certain point in time, he was asked to do an outreach program because he got so much money from the National Science Foundation. So it's a normal thing to do an outreach program. The normal answer would be to publish a book or sponsor an exhibition in a museum or do a website. And he was thinking now, because he had gathered all those machines, he could use a subset of these machines and bring them to ordinary people to make stuff. And particularly he wanted to do that in developing countries and in disadvantaged neighborhoods. So he started that outreach program, and every time he set up such a Fab Lab, which he called it, fabrication laboratory, 5 or 10 more people came around and said, I want such a Fab Lab as well. I want such a Fab Lab as well. So this outreach program started in the early 2000s, and today in 2013 we probably have something close to 200 Fab Labs globally, because this really, it went out of hand. This was not planned. This was this incredible growth of those labs. Apparently there is a need with people to have these machines and to make things. There's one important thing about Fab Labs. While there is this immediate need to make things, and that could be, in developed countries, it could be to produce a gadget that is not on the market. And in developing countries, that can be to produce machines and equipment and tools for daily work and life. So that's just one thing. But because there are those many labs, and they are all across the globe, there is also this amazing resource of that global network of Fab Labs. So the second part of your question was, what are the business model? Or the business models, really? Because there is no such a thing as one unique business model. In that sense, Fab Labs are very different to other initiatives and companies that are operating in this make-up movement. Think of tech shops who have a very clear-cut model how they operate, and every tech shop operates along the same model. Take the maker fairs, where you've got like the mini maker fairs and the big maker fairs, but all the maker fairs operate along the same model. This is very different with Fab Labs. The main sort of types of Fab Lab are probably, the sort of empowerment lab that really brings technology to disadvantaged neighborhoods or disadvantaged villages or cities, developing countries or developed countries. A very important model is the educational model, where a Fab Lab is part of a school, a college, a university, and then is used to support education on those various levels. In primary and secondary school, Fab Labs are good places to learn about technology, about engineering, about design. In universities, Fab Labs are good places for students to actually prototype the projects they're working on, or say in an architectural school, building scale models, stuff like that. So that's the sort of probably two most important models. there are other models. There are Fab Labs that actually cater to specific social needs. There's a Fab Lab in the States that has specifically been set up to help juvenile delinquents to sort of find their way back into normal society. I could imagine a Fab Lab being used as a facility to train technical people, which is quite often the case in Africa. I could imagine the Fab Labs, being used to integrate, being between conflicting parties, say in a disadvantaged neighborhood in a South American slum. There are still other uses, certainly for companies, startups, young entrepreneurs. Fab Labs are an excellent infrastructure to build technology, particularly because Fab Labs have this combination of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computation, which is in traditional industry hardly found in the same place. This is always different departments, which is very difficult to deal with if you're a startup. And there are Fab Labs that very explicitly operate as a sort of platform and say, look, we offer the infrastructure to entrepreneurs and companies who then produce certain programs, certain services, courses, workshops, trainings, using that platform, but operate as independent companies, really. The interesting thing there is that Fab Labs move into an area where a single Fab Lab uses different models, and essentially the business model of one Fab Lab could be a puzzle composed of many of those aspects. And the other interesting bit, and that's why I really think Fab Labs are doing something quite unique, is that Fab Labs, particularly in those platform and incubator situations, Fab Labs operate not as single businesses, but in a network of businesses. And that's really, in my view, the future of industry and the future of our economy, which is not scaling vertically along the old hierarchical axis, but which has to develop ways to scale laterally.
So, since you're the founder of Square One, could you tell us about the sustainability and viability of the business model of your...
All right, I have to clarify one thing. Square One is my own company, but it's not a Fab Lab.
Okay, but it's affiliated
as Square One, I have been helping numerous Fab Labs to sort of start up, find their way, find their business model combination, establish their operational procedures, etc. So I've been involved in setting up 3 different Fab Labs. 2 of them are Fab Labs that are based within universities. So there was either university funding or external funding to set up the lab, to buy the machines, to train lab managers, to establish operational procedures, to establish links to programs that were already running at university, and to establish new programs.
So, do you have a preference in a business modeling, or do you believe that it depends on the situation?
I think it really depends on the situation. I believe that this institutional model, that's a relatively straightforward and easy model if we think in terms of financing investment and financing operations. It's increasingly complex then, which is often a goal of those institutional Fab Labs, to actually link the institution with the world outside. Because universities, become aware that this ivory tower mentality that, used to be the typical university thing in the 19th and 20th century, that this is not working anymore. And you see it in very many fields. This Fab Lab idea is just one instance of that. But it really is complex to connect a university Fab Lab to the city outside. And it's probably best done through active programs that actively, reach out into the city and bring in people from the city to make meaningful connections with what is happening within the university. But this is a complex endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There are other labs that decidedly do not go down the institutional and subsidies route, where people just say, we think a Fab Lab could be useful for ourselves, for our community, which start out really from within the community. This is a completely different situation. And in such a situation, the financing is typically much harder, but reaching out and connecting to the community is much, much easier. There is one typical problem with those labs, because they're lacking some money, for instance, and then they're looking for money, and then they're trying to actually attract subsidies and start to get focused on getting in subsidies instead of focusing on connecting to the community. So that's just the two models I really know
Yes.
because I've worked with them, and they've all got their advantages and disadvantages. Yeah. And the trouble always is to make the best out of the advantages and sort of find your way around the disadvantages of a particular model.
Great input. So just one last question. Would like your perspective on creative industries in general, its future, its development, how you see it, your view on that.
Now, the term creative industries has sort of been invented around the turn of the century. Before, we had essentially the same industries, like media industry, cultural industries, cultural historical industries like museums, and then depending on the definition of cultural industries, hairdressers and cooks and software houses and programmers fall all under this kind of umbrella. But if we sort of home in really on the core cultural creative industries, say media, culture, arts, particularly in media and culture, there's a funny development happening, and that is that the big ones are getting bigger, and the small ones are getting smaller, and the medium ones disappear. And I think this has to do with this shift from the horizontal, from the vertical to the horizontal, from the hierarchical to the lateral way of doing business. And with a kind of backlash reaction to that, and that's probably what Felix Stalder is going to expand on, because he has really researched that. Those big ones that are getting bigger and sort of pushing out the medium ones are still rooted in the hierarchical 20th century paradigm, where and they're not exactly good at networking. The medium ones lack the power to compete in that market. And they don't really have the capability and ability and experience of working in networks. I think they could develop that, but they don't have it yet. Whereas the small ones, the individuals and say, 3-5 people running a studio or running a company, by definition have to work in networks, because as a single entrepreneur or a small group of entrepreneurs, you never can have everything that you need in-house. So this is the new way of working in the creative industries. And I believe that in the long run, those networks of individual actors can easily compete with the big ones. I have no idea if the big ones are going to disappear completely. I would guess rather no. But I would guess that they will have to give away dominance to the agile and flexible networks of smaller players in the long run.